Have you ever stood in your closet surrounded by a pile of cruise clothes and essentials trying to pack for a cruise only to wonder, can I bring this? You're not alone. I'm Melissa, a university professor who loves to cruise and who loves to talk ship, and today we're unpacking a surprisingly entertaining topic, the growing list of things you are not allowed to bring on board a cruise ship. Some bans make total sense, while others may make you scratch your head. But either way, it's good to know about these things because you don't want to end up bringing something on board that's not allowed. Now, before we dive into the specifics, it helps to understand why that list of prohibited items keeps growing. Cruise ships are essentially floating cities, complete with stringent fire codes, limited storage space, and a diverse passenger mix of people who like to vacation in different ways. Some like party, some like quiet. A malfunctioning gadget or flammable item, it's not just an inconvenience, but it could pose a serious safety risk. Lines also create rules to minimize noise, protect the crew from liability, and preserve the overall guest experience. Recent headlines about some unruly passengers and too much of a party culture have started to push cruise lines to tighten up enforcement. And some of these changes have recently impacted the fun ships, the party cruise line, Carnival. They've recently banned Bluetooth speakers and even the handheld clack fans that are used with the boots on the ground line dance. And they've also started to crack down on marijuana. They've also imposed curfews for guests under 17 and now require guests over 25 to accompany minors. Now, this isn't random. This is a response to growing concerns that Carnival is a, shall we say, not classy cruise line, that it's noisy, people are ill-behaved, things like that. But it's not just Carnival. Other cruise lines like Royal Caribbean, Norwegian, and MSC, they also have their own unique restrictions, from drones to weapons, of course, to irons and outside food. Understanding the rationale behind these bans will help you pack smarter and avoid frustration. First, let's talk about the usual suspects: weapons, irons, and candles. These are items that almost all of the cruise lines prohibit. It should go without saying, you can't bring a firearm, a knife, mace, bear spray, stuff like that on a cruise ship. Now here's the funny one. I once got something confiscated myself. I'll tell you that little story in a minute. But when I had to do the walk of shame after the cruise to go claim my item, and I got to see the table of confiscated items, do you know what I saw? The vast majority of, well, first was candles. It shocked me how many people thought they could bring a candle and have an open flame on a cruise ship. Tons of candles, but decorative swords. I'm assuming these belong to the little kids, but they're little plastic swords, pirate-themed costumes. For even a Halloween cruise, you can't have them. They're gonna confiscate them. Now you'll get it back at the end of your cruise. I'll tell you about the process later, but they are gonna take them away. Clothes irons, steamers, and hot plates, they're also off limits. And I know, nobody wants wrinkly clothes, especially when you're traveling and you're trying to look cute on a cruise, but those devices pose a significant fire risk. My workaround, oddly enough, cruise lines do allow flat irons, ladies, so a flat iron can work in a pinch, and also the wrinkle release spray can be your best friend. Now, if you really want to go all out and avoid wrinkles, most cruise ships do offer laundry or at least an ironing room, or they offer those services where you can pay to have your stuff washed and or pressed. So you can always use those if you need to. But obviously, don't bring candles, don't bring incense, don't bring any type of weapons, because they're gonna take it away without a doubt. So those are the obvious items that are banned from a cruise ship, but let's talk about some of the more recent ones that have been making headlines. Carnival, in a move that stunned many longtime guests, has banned Bluetooth speakers. Although interestingly, they do still sell a $99 Carnival cruise ship shaped Bluetooth speaker in their fun shops on board, but I digress. But anyway, this actually is not a new ban. Carnival's banned Bluetooth speakers for a while, but for some reason people just kind of caught on to it and started talking about it. Now, their rationale is that it's excessive noise in public spaces. And there has been an uptick in passenger disputes over it. Both, hey, I'm trying to chill and you're playing loud music, you're killing my vibe, turn it off, people fight, or disputes over genres of music. Even though I live in Kentucky, I hate country music. It makes me want to rip my ears off. There's nothing worse when I'm trying to relax than listening to blaring country music. So I personally welcome the ban on Bluetooth speakers, but I know that a lot of cruisers are unhappy about that. Once I was at MSC Ocean Key, which is a private island, I'm trying to relax, and someone is listening to very loud music. It actually was a genre of music I like, But it was just really disruptive, and I had no say or consent in if I wanted to hear that music or not. And he blared it for like a whole hour, and after giving him dirty looks and he didn't get the hint, finally we just got up and moved to another spot. So I personally welcome this, but I want to know what you think. Now, the same policy with Carnival bans handheld clack fans. So not those like battery operated fans that sweaty bitches like me have to use sometimes, but the clack ones. So if you know the popular boots on the ground line dance, there's the sharp sound that it makes. That's part of the song. That's part of the dance. And Carnival has banned these, at least in the indoor nightclubs. Now, they've kind of walked this back a little bit. They say it's allowed now on the Lido decks. But some critics argue that this rule is basically cultural targeting because it's basically the African-American community that embraces the boots on the ground song. Although I love it too, and I'm trying to learn the dance, but it's really hard. But maybe on my next cruise I'll have it. We'll see. But whether or not I can actually have a fan to go with it remains to be seen. Now, Carnival has claimed it's not about cultural targeting. They're not trying to target any particular demographic group, but rather it's about passenger safety because some of these fans are big, some of them are kind of heavy. They don't want people to get hit in the club when someone's clacking their fan. But I don't know. What do you think? Now, Carnival also, like every other cruise line, explicitly bans illegal drugs, even in US states where it's legal. That includes marijuana. Now, obviously, drugs are banned from every cruise line, but Carnival has been known of being a little more, shall we say, lenient when it comes to ganja use on the cruise ships. For a while, every single Carnival cruise I had ever taken, and there are many of them, I had always smelled the Mary Jane on every cruise. Now, it doesn't bother me particularly. I don't really care, but I know it bothers a lot of people. But Carnival has received a lot of heat about this, about, again, being the classless cruise line or the trashy cruise line. So they have really started to crack down when it comes to marijuana use. I will tell you now, almost every single Carnival cruise I take, which is still a lot, there is always a drug-sniffing dog at embarkation. However, I rarely see drug-sniffing dogs when I sail other cruise lines. So there is a noticeable difference in terms of their cracking down on their illegal drugs policy. But again, not all bans are as obvious. Many cruise lines prohibit inflatables in pools. So think of those giant unicorn floats or even those inflatable sticks, that's what I use, or the inflatable hammocks. Now, I do encourage cruisers to bring them because they are awesome to have on beach days, on port days, but you can't use them in the cruise ship pool. Now, one that I know frustrates a lot of parents is that this inflatable prohibition also goes for kiddie pools. And I know parents get frustrated because kids in diapers who are not fully potty trained are not allowed to use cruise ship water areas. So some of them thought a clever workaround would be to bring a kiddie pool, inflate it, fill it with water so their little kids in diapers can also participate in things. And they also use that as a workaround to the fact that most cruise line staterooms do not have bathtubs in the bathroom. So it's hard to bathe a small toddler, baby, or child. But cruise ships do not allow inflatable pools on board either. Now, back to another unconventional ban, and yes, it's Carnival. Carnival Ambassador John Heald at one point on Facebook, in a Facebook comment, not through an official PR release or anything, but it was there, I saw it with my own eyes, and he hasn't denied it, banned upside down pineapple decorations. And there are some cruisers who were displaying such decorations on their stateroom door that shared a letter that they had received in their stateroom with their decorations being taken down from Carnival, saying that they are a family-friendly cruise line and these types of decorations are not allowed. And again, John Heald himself said on his Facebook page in a comment that they are not allowed. Now, Carnival did again receive some heat. They're always getting the heat. They're always getting all the social media attention, but I think some of their wounds are self-inflicted. But they kind of seem to quietly walk this back a little bit. I have since actually seen decorations on doors that didn't get taken down. They never officially came out with any stance saying either way, but this was more of a quiet ban. Now here's a ban on cruise ships that drives me crazy, and that is extension cords. I have a lot of things that need to be charged. I do professor work at sea. I'm a real life professor. I have my laptop that needs to be charged. I have my phone that needs to be charged. I have friends that have Apple Watches that need to be charged. I have AirPods. I have hair products, hair things that need to be plugged in. And usually staterooms have very few electrical outlets. So I always cruise with my non-surge extension cord. And most cruise lines will allow you to bring an extension cord on board as long as it's non-surge. But there's one big caveat. There's one cruise line that bans pretty much all power strips or extension cords, and that's Royal Caribbean. I love Royal Caribbean, but this ban that they have drives me crazy. They do not allow these extension cords, these extenders. So every single time I cruise Royal Caribbean, I always struggle with the charging of all of my stuff because of this ban. They don't allow extension cords of any type, even if it is non-surge. And when it comes to personal experience with having things confiscated, I can tell you the process because I had my first confiscation actually on Royal Caribbean. I took my first Royal Caribbean cruise years ago. I brought my trusty non-surge extension cord. I take every cruise. I actually take it on all my travels, even land travels, just because it's convenient. Didn't think twice about it. Had it in my carry-on bag, went through security at embarkation. They caught it. They pulled me aside. And they said, you know, you can't have this. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's non-surge. I'm allowed to have that. And Royal Caribbean said, not on Royal Caribbean, you can't. So they took it away. And they gave me a little claim slip. Obviously, if you get something confiscated that is illegal, they're not going to give it back to you at the end of the cruise, right? Like edibles, for example. But after the cruise, you take your little slip, you disembark at the terminal. There's a little table where you will go to pick up your confiscated item. You'll give them your claim check. You'll get your item back. So I did get my non-surge extension cord back, thankfully. And my second experience with a confiscated item early in my cruise days was on Carnival Caribbean. I brought a steamer because I also don't like wrinkled clothes. Thinking I knew irons were not allowed, but I thought steamers would be allowed because it's just steamed water. It's hot water, like in a shower, right? And in this case, it was in a checked bag, but even checked bags go through a security scanning process. It got caught. I was in my stateroom on embarkation day, wondering where my bag was. It seemed to get to me really late. And then finally I got a call to be summoned down to the bowels of the ship with security. And they pulled out my suitcase and they said, is this yours? I said, yes. They said, well, you're not allowed to have steamers on board. Here's your claim check. And again, they took it. I got it back at the end of the cruise. So it's not the end of the world. Usually if you have something get confiscated, you will get it back. It's just a little bit of a hassle. Now here's another thing that's banned that you might not even think to bring on a cruise ship. But one of my favorite cruise lines is Virgin Voyages. And every time I post Virgin content and I have cruised in a Virgin balcony room, they see that iconic red hammock. So every Virgin Voyages cruise ship on a balcony room, they have this beautiful hammock. It's a great part of cruising with Virgin, chilling on a hammock and swinging on your balcony. It's amazing. But I post my content, people see it, and they're like, oh my God, I can bring a hammock on a cruise ship? No, friends, you cannot. Don't do that. Virgin's red balcony iconic hammocks are custom made from marine grade fabric. They're specially designed for cruise ships. They're designed to be safely anchored as part of the design into the balcony structure. So some cruisers think, oh, my favorite cruise hack is to go buy a basic camping hammock, bring it and set it up on my deck. Well, you can't do that. Don't do it. They're going to catch it. They're going to take it down. You may get in trouble. So just don't do it. But if you do love Virgin Voyages iconic red hammock, they do sell them online, but for home use. Another category that can trip up newbie cruisers is the prohibition of outside food with some caveats and certain appliances. With the exception of pre-packaged snacks, yes, you can bring them. And sometimes people are smart alecks and they're like, well, you're going on an all-inclusive cruise with food everywhere. Why do you need snacks? Well, the cruise lines don't always have the snacks that you want. For example, sometimes you want a bag of chips, and chips are not always easy to find or get on a cruise ship, except maybe the deli, but you have to wait in line. Sometimes they're stale. You just want your little snackies, all right? So don't judge people. But you can bring food and snacks on board, but it has to be in the pre-packaged, unopened original containers. Anything that has been opened, they're going to take it away. They're going to make you throw it away. You're also not allowed, obviously, to bring kitchen appliances, slow cookers, air fryers, toaster ovens, things like that. They're banned for obvious reasons, as are kettles and coffee makers. Although there are some European cruise lines that provide kettles in cabins, which is kind of interesting. Now, if you do need a kettle for baby formula or medical reasons, you can contact the cruise line ahead of time, but don't just bring your own on board. Another is drones. People love to get that great video footage or those great camera shots from high above. And some cruise lines will actually allow you to have a drone, but not when you're on board. So there are some strict conditions with certain cruise lines. You can check on the cruise line that you're going to sail on. They're meant for in-port use only, never on board, kind of like those floaties. Bring them, use them on port days when you're off the ship. Don't try to use them on the ship. But you usually have to fill out paperwork. You have to go through this process in advance. When you go to embark, they're going to actually take the drone, hold it for you, give it to you on port days. It's this whole thing. So unless you absolutely, for some professional purpose, have to have drone footage, it's usually not worth the hassle to try to bring it on board. Now, drones are not strictly prohibited, but they're very, very restricted and very limited in the use. Another area that has a gray zone are musical instruments. Surprisingly, guitars and violins are sometimes allowed, but but amplifiers, drums, and other loud instruments are going to be restricted or banned. So if you had plans to jam out with friends on the atrium or Lido deck, make sure you check your cruise line policy before bringing it on board. And back to hanging things on the balconies, not only are hammocks banned, but also clotheslines are as well. It's tempting to hang a clothesline and wash your clothes because some people like to ball on a budget, like me. You like to save money when you cruise. They want to not have to overpack, so they want to do laundry maybe in their room or in their shower or whatever, and then hang their stuff out to dry. So some cruisers try to bring a clothesline with them and hang their wet swimwear, towels, or other things out on the balcony. That is not allowed. Why? Because these items can easily blow off and end up polluting the ocean. So they're not going to be allowed. If you try to put it out there, they're going to take it.
Now, most cruise lines, like hotels, they have the retractable clotheslines in the showers. So just use that instead to dry off your wet clothes, your swimwear, and your towels. So I'm curious, have you ever had an item confiscated on a cruise? Let me know in the comments and let's talk ship.